It is not really a points-based system. They're just trying to make it look like one. Oh, hello, and welcome to the most interesting video on all of YouTube. I know what you like. I know what you were thinking when you clicked on this thumbnail. You were thinking, immigration law. So spicy. You know, I did have a relative who was an immigrant once. It was my great aunt. My great aunt. So with Brexit and all that nonsense now coming forth, I think it's incredibly important to stay informed and clued in as to what exactly the changes are going to take place within the immigration policy of the UK. This is especially important if you're a European, and especially important if you're a non-European migrant like myself. Also, before we get into it, I don't think this is going to be what you're expecting. In fact, I want to say this beforehand, but some of the changes in the immigration policy is actually a change for the better. I know I've seen a lot of things in the media at the moment about like things being really bad. I've seen posts on my timeline where like, oh my gosh, we're gonna get deported. That's not the case. I think a lot of this is being blown out at the moment because people haven't actually taken the time to read the news article that the government put out themselves. So that's what we're doing today. Also, for starters, by the way, in case you don't know, I've gone through the entire migration process from the US to the UK. It's taken me 7.5 years. I only have a couple more months and then I can get citizenship. So I'm very well educated in terms of all these different tier systems and all the points-based systems and all that nonsense. So without further ado, let's finally jump in. The UK's point-based immigration system policy statement. All right, so right off the bat, the United Kingdom has exited the EU on the 31st of January, yada yada. We're ending the Free Movement Act and we'll introduce an immigration bill with a points-based system that gets highly skilled workers. Okay, something that they've been pushing before. We will deliver a system that works in the interests of the whole of the UK and prioritizes the skills a person has to offer, not where they come from. Right off the bat, that's actually a good start. The fact that they're saying, regardless of where you come from, we're trying to get people with skills, I see that as a good thing. For too long, distorted by the European free movement rights, the immigration system has been failing to meet the needs of the British people, failing to deliver benefits across the UK, and failing the highly skilled migrants from around the world who want to come to the UK and make a contribution to our economy and society. Okay, so right there, you might view it as a bit of fluffy language, but I do like that they've kind of admitted, hey, we've been failing. Everyone, UK people, migrants, the whole system's been bad. So it seems like they're just trying to fix it. A for effort, okay? Like I said, I'm trying to be objective here. It doesn't seem so bad. The language is a bit like dramatic, sure, but come on. So here's our approach to change this. We're implementing a new system to transform the way this all works. They then talk about their approach on how they're gonna do this, saying it will revolutionize the operation of the UK border. Okay, deliver a better customer experience. I like to imagine we're all customers trying to move to the UK, like, hello, I'd like one citizenship, please. That'll be £11,000. So starting in 2021, EU and non-EU citizens will be treated equally. Interesting, okay. And here's one I've seen a lot of headlines about, which is, we will not introduce a general low-skilled or temporary work route. As far as I'm aware, for the last decade or so, there hasn't been a low-skilled route to enter the UK from outside the EU. So like they said earlier, it's pretty much the EU is becoming the rest of the world in regards to immigration, which, okay. In terms of how they can do that, they explain later on. They also say that there's loads of EU citizens currently living within the UK that will provide the employers of the UK with more than enough labor. Sure. So now we get into the juicy stuff, the UK's points-based system. Now, the Migration Advisory Committee has recently recommended that they bring down the threshold of salary from £30,000 per annum to £25,600. That's good news. That is a good update. They also lowered the skills threshold from needing a master's level proficiency job all the way down to an A-level proficiency job. So that, yet again, is another bone I feel like they're throwing to be like, hey, we're updating all this stuff. I know it might be hard, but we're lowering the salary threshold and we're lowering the skill threshold. This is good. This is good for Bitcoin. In the past, when I wanted to look for a job in the UK, I had to make sure it was at a master's degree level proficiency in order for them to hire me. And I also had to make sure it was over a certain salary count. 30,000, it used to be as the overall, and now it's 25,600. Like I said, that's not so bad. Now, this is the first update we've been given from Priti Patel, the Home Secretary of the Home Office, so I know that there will be more in the future, because at this point, they're just saying 25,600, but there will most likely be loads of different amounts depending on what field you're in, because that's how it has been historically for non-EU migrants. Me specifically, my job in digital marketing, I think had a threshold of 23,000, where you had to be making over that much in order to be able to get sponsored, but I digress. Let us move on. Now we're going to the point of skilled workers. And this is the point where I kind of want to be a bit critical because it's supposed to be a points-based system similar to the one that Australia currently has. but it's not. It looks like one, and they're kind of putting a little spray paint on it to be like, look, it's got points, but it's not really a points-based system. The reason I say this, if you look at the characteristics and how you can get these points listed in this table here, you might notice 3 of them aren't tradable. You need to get 70 points in order to work in the UK, and 50 of those points are mandatory. So it's not really a points-based system. It's mostly, do you have this, this, and this? Okay, now you get to choose whether or not you make enough money, have a PhD, or have a STEM PhD. 3 things to choose from, and you only really have 3 different permutations of options, so it is not really a points-based system. They're just trying to make it look like one. So first off, the thing anyone needs in order to work in the UK is an offer from an approved sponsor. This has always been a thing for non-EU migrants. Basically, I'll have a link in the description for the list of all current UK sponsors. Let's just say you have a dream job. You've gotten an offer and they're like, oh, but we're not a sponsor. If they love you enough, they can go through with the paperwork and become a sponsor to sponsor you, or do the homework yourself and help them along the way. I did that for a company, got them to sponsor me. It was a lot more effort, but hey, if you really want to work for the job, you get the job. Next, you just have to make sure the job's at the appropriate level. So is it at A level at least? Like I said, that's not that bad anymore, so it's lowered that threshold. 20 points. You're now at 40 points. The last one that is mandatory is speaking English at a required level. At this point, if you're watching this video, I'm pretty sure that you speak English at a required level because you're able to understand me and I speak faster than most anyone else on YouTube. So you pass in my book. But if they're not going to judge you based on your subscription to my channel, you either have to come from an English-speaking country such as the US, Canada, Australia, or you have to have a degree that was taught in English, or lastly, you just have to be certified and take a test that proves that you speak English well enough to live in the UK. Those are your 3 options, basically. But like I said, if you come from the US, Australia, or a European country that has English listed as a main language, you're mostly fine. So there you go, 50 points. What's left? You just need 20. How hard could it be? Is your job over 25,600 pounds per annum? Good. You've got 70 points. You're good to go. You've passed literally everything here. However, what if it isn't? What if you're in between 23,040 pounds and 25,599 pounds? Well, at this point, you have to have a PhD that's relevant to your job. Any PhD? Anyone got a PhD? I've got a master's. That's not good enough for you? I guess not. And if your job is under 23,000 pounds, but above 20,480, you have to have a PhD in a STEM subject, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. Wow, okay. Like I said, there's only 3 options here. So those are your 3 options. Either you make over 25,600 or you have a PhD. That's it. Not really points-based. You can't really trade here. So basically what this means to most people, as I assume most people do not have a PhD, your job has to be over 25,600 pounds. Now, most employers I've worked with would totally work with me if they wanted me enough. My first ever job outside of my internship was 25,000 pounds salary. So I would have just been under this. But like I said, there are different levels that will probably be introduced to this system based on what your career path is. Are you working in digital marketing? Maybe that's a bit lower. Are you working in another field? It could be a bit higher than 25,600, but this is just the expectation they're setting right now. Also, if your job is in shortage, then you actually get some extra points. Well, not if it's in Shoreditch, you actually lose points for that. It's not the nicest, but if your job is in shortage, if there's not a lot of people working that job and they need people, they will give you more points regardless of what the salary is going for. Actually, right here at number 10, it says they will publish more details on this points-based system regarding the points tables, the shortage occupations, and so on, so you just have to give them a bit of time. I think Priti Patel was just like, hey, we want everyone to know we've got something going on, and like I said, it's not so bad so far at first glance. Now, when it comes to highly skilled workers, this is the interesting bit, they're going to extend the current global talent route to EU citizens on the same basis as non-EU citizens. What the heck does that mean? I'm fairly certain what this is referring to is the Tier 1 Exceptional Talent Visa. It's also going into more detail in number 13 here about the unsponsored route, basically meaning that you can come to the UK and you can work for any employer you want, unrestricted. You don't have to have a sponsor. That's why I'm pretty sure that's basically the Exceptional Talent Visa. That's the one that I had for 3 years after working the Tier 2 just worker visa for 3 years, and it's very, very difficult to do. So they're kind of outlining this to be like, hey, don't worry, if you got a lot of skills, you can come and work for anyone. It's a lot more difficult than that. I assume they're going to be doing it the same way they've done it for non-EU migrants, which means you have to get letters from 2 previous CEOs or employers saying that you're like one of the most talented in your field. You also have to write this giant letter about how you're going to increase the UK economy via your work and your plans for living in the UK forever. It's quite detailed. However, if you put in the work, it's a good visa. Tier 1, exceptional talent, is a beauty. But if you are hoping to move to the UK, I really wouldn't rest all my laurels on that one because it is incredibly difficult. And not only do you need all these letters and writing this essay and all this, but you also need to be approved by the head of the UK's sector that you're in that you're highly skilled. So I had to get a letter from Tech Nation UK. If you're highly skilled in music, you have to get like the Royal Academy of Music to approve you. Like it's intense. Let's just put it at that. I'd say the easiest of all 5, if you're not arty, is definitely the Tech Nation one, but that's because my job was in marketing and or tech, so it makes sense. So here they go into more detail about the changes to the lower skilled workers, saying that they're not allowing low skilled workers below A level, basically to get a job within the UK from the EU or anywhere else for that matter. However, how the UK businesses can adapt is quite an interesting paragraph here, because it says UK businesses will need to adapt and adjust to the end of free movement by increasing your productivity and your investment in staff retention. So basically, come on, be more retentive, be more productive. We don't need those people. Do a better job. Thanks, pretty. Appreciate that. That was pretty nice of you. If you couldn't tell, that was sarcasm. Now, I've seen a lot of my friends that are from the EU posting that they're scared of getting deported and they don't really know what's going on, and that makes sense because it's a scary time and there's a lot of changes. However, they have announced that they have the EU settlement scheme and it's operating effectively. Now, if you don't know what that means, it's actually quite good. As long as you've been living in the UK before December 2020, which is right now basically, you can apply before June 2021, and you get one of 2 statuses, pre-settled status or settled status. What's the difference? Really quickly, if you're a pre-settled EU citizen, it means that you've been living in the UK for less than 5 years at a continuous time, and you get unrestricted work. You can do whatever you want, and you can live in the UK for up to 5 more years, and then you can apply for settled in the future. If you're already been living in the UK for over 5 years, well, you get settled status. What does that mean? Same thing, unrestricted work access, can live in the UK as long as you want, and you can apply for citizenship. Not so bad. So basically, if you're an EU citizen living in the UK right now, you really shouldn't have to worry. You just have to apply for the EUSS. Now, if you've seen my video about how much a British passport really costs, you might be freaking out like, oh my God, the fees are gonna kill me. How can I afford this? Well, guess what? They've actually have a fee of £0. It's free. They really could have done a lot worse here. I'm trying to view this objectively, but they could have done a lot worse with this, but charging a £0 fee, that's nice. Then they go on about how students are able to move to the UK, and it's the same thing that it has been for non-EU migrants. So the entire process that I went through. Do you have an offer from an accredited UK university? Check. Do you speak English well enough and you've already passed that English certification test? 2. Do you have enough money to support yourself in your area of the UK that you're moving to? 3. That's basically it. You just gotta have those 3. You can move to the UK, same as you normally would. Then you get a shiny tier 4 visa, and from there, you can hop off to the tier 2, the tier 1, the tier 5, depends. Are you a minister, a sports person, or entertainment industry man? Also, by the way, if you are going the tier 4 student route, you do have to pass your degree. If you fail, that's like a one-way ticket back. They're like, nah. You do have to pass the degree if you're here for that visa. Then they go over the other standard methods of entering the UK, such as if you've got a family member that's British, or if you're in asylum, or if you're marrying someone that's British. It's still the same process as it was for non-EU migrants, which means it's pricey. There's a lot of waiting periods, but it does work that way. Also, they have absolutely no dedicated route for self-employed people. They don't really care, which fair enough, I guess. They recognize that you're an incredibly important asset, and there's a lot of professions where self-employed people are important, consultancy, things like that, but there's no reason for them to introduce you to the UK if you're just self-employed. Fair enough. It comes from a self-employed person, but I didn't come here as a self-employed person. I had a lot of jobs, and I totally didn't expect to be able to become this way. So they then go on about the immigration health surcharge, where you get charged a bit for using the NHS as long as you're an immigrant. They've been doing that for a couple years now, so makes sense. Migrants will be making their application online, and most EU citizens will enroll facial biometrics using smartphone self-enrollment. Fingerprints will not initially be required. You gotta love it, honestly. The amount of times I've had to get my fingerprints done, and it cost me £16 every time, it's quite nice. Like I said, I'm just trying to find small positives here. Another interesting point that I've seen a lot of people not notice is specifically in section 33 here, it says everyone is treated equally except for British and Irish. Ireland specifically has a different type of agreement going on, and so if you are Irish, you don't have to worry about this. Then they go on about how they're going to engage people and tell people about these new updates. Share my video if you want, you know, Preti Patel. It's pretty good, it's informative. I've gone through this whole thing. And then lastly, I thought this was really interesting. They did an analysis of this points-based system and the salary thresholds, and they found that 70% of the resident European Economic Area citizens arriving in the UK since 2004 would be found ineligible for either skilled work or the tier 4 visa, given the current characteristics. That's quite interesting if you think about it. 70% of people that have entered the UK from the EU since 2004 would not be eligible. But like I said, that's okay. They can still currently apply for this EU SS plan and get settlement status. But I do think they put that in there just to be like, hey, maybe it's not so bad. Like I said, trying to view this in a positive light, but it is still scary, and I know a lot of information is flying about, and they didn't really give us all the information yet, but it is important to read these things for yourself and not necessarily just read headlines going, everything's on fire. Everything is on fire. Well, I hope you feel informed. This was a lot of information to throw at you, but hopefully, whether you're from the UK or you're an EU citizen or you're a non-EU migrant, you now know a little bit more about how the system is going to work, and hopefully it helps you out. So now's the part I really would like to hear from you. If you're a UK citizen or if you're not, what are your thoughts on this process? Do you think this is fair? Do you think this is a good idea? I'd like to hear like what UK citizens actually believe. Like, do you think this is good? And or the migrants trying to move to the UK. Does this work out? I feel like it might. Who knows? The future! Anyway, if you want to see me in the future, please be sure to give me a big ol' subscribe. Make new videos every Sunday. Got a really cool one coming next week you're gonna love. Or you can just watch one of these. Other than that, I'll see you guys next Sunday. Goodbye.